Okay, here we go. Everybody, you've had a chance to read this over, and the reason I put this up is I want to make sure that everybody, the way we've put together everything in our program is geared around this mission statement. And so it's always I think a good chance for everybody to take some time and read it through. And we really we try and take on a lot at our program. So our mission is to provide a comprehensive sailing program for all youth in the Bay Area. From Learn to Sail to travel teams, our classes stress safety and cultivate the values of character, community, and competitiveness. Our program instills lifelong enjoyment and stewardship of our waterways, we're gonna go back, and oceans and world environment. The thing that really, all of these things are very important to everything that we do. My goal when we think about getting our kids into sailing, I'm always trying to think, how am I gonna keep them going? And my goal is that when they're leaving the program at 18, they're not wanting to leave, and they're hopefully coming back and coaching and helping out and still here, but they're definitely still very involved in the sailing world. And so all of our pathways have us trying to think about how we are going to keep our kids sailing for as long as possible. The best part I think about our sport is that you could be racing and sailing until you're in your 90s. And so the goal is that we're not just racing oriented, and we're not just learning how to go and anchor our boat and stay in a harbor. We're kind of learning the entire part of our sports, and obviously part of that is we're building character, community, and competitiveness, because we are definitely a racing program as well. Okay, next slide, John. Sorry for my background noise. Okay, quickly. So again, next Monday, when our next general info night, we're going to go over this in depth. And so don't, look at it and go, oh gosh, I got to take notes, and how am I going to remember all this? We are going over basically the top tier of this. So if you look at the two red classes, we have two entry points into our program. And the entry points is that it basically means you know nothing about the sport and you'd like to join us. This is where you typically land if you've never been in our program. So Learn to Sail is obviously most of us. You follow those arrows across the top. We introduce you to racing. You progress through the Opti program, so Opti Green, Development Team, and Opti Champ. And then from there, you can see in red, you transition to an FJ or a 420. And you'd also be joining brand new people there as well. So hold on. So FJ intro is the next intro, and it goes into FJ's 420s, and our new addition to the program are keel boats. So again, it's kind of, our mission statement leads us to think about what type of boats would produce those lifelong sailors. And so keel boats was a very big missing piece in my mind. And so I'm really excited that we now have that. And we'll talk more about that next Monday. Next slide. Okay, so COVID obviously is very much a reality that we are all living with. It is by no means, I don't think anybody is, happy with all the restrictions that we have to live by. But, we all hopefully understand all of the hoops and things that we need to do and hoops to jump through. Just as a quick summary here. So our classes are small. We don't have many classes at one place at a time. We have two venues to use. We have Chesapeake and also West Point, which is great, especially in this time of COVID. We currently have no more than 2 classes at each venue at once. And most of the time, especially this first month, we just have 1 class. It's fairly easy to make sure our kids are, distance and everything's going great on the water. It's when we're on land, and it takes a lot of orchestration to make sure that we all stay safe and we're not crisscrossing when we shouldn't be and such. And so we're really lucky that we have these two venues to spread out. Social distancing, we make sure everybody's wearing masks. We have disinfection on everything. And the biggest thing, this last one, is the symptom check prior to arrival. And so we have a code of safety practices that is on our website. It gets sent to all of our classes before class starts. It usually gets sent again before they show up to class that next day. It's very important that, it's basically 5 things, but it's making sure that we're paying attention to any sort of exposure, making sure that we don't have any symptoms, making sure that if we've traveled, we keep ourselves isolated until we come back, those types of things. And I mean, there's a lot of this COVID stuff that I just don't like, and it's wearing and it's tiring, and it's not fun to be the bad guy. And so a lot of this stuff it's an honor system, and it's making sure that you guys take ownership of it before coming down to the program. And so I can't stress this enough. This is really important. We've been doing a great job. We've run classes since June, and that has happened because everybody's been following all of these safety practices. So just wanted to update that for everybody. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so quickly, this is, and all of you on the call most likely know these already, but just as a reference, these are our Opti classes for the season. You'll see the list of the coaches for them, the dates, what days they are at. All of our Opti classes this season are going to be at West Point, which all of these pictures happen to be out of West Point. And you'll see in this, in pink right here, there's an in-house regatta on April 10th. So I'd like you all to mark your calendars. I've already put it in some emails, but I just want to make sure you all have that on your calendar. There will not be any regattas this season because of COVID. And so all of our Bays regattas have been canceled at least until May. And so we're going to have an in-house regatta, meaning if you were here last season, it's just a similar setup to what we did last season, where our younger kids will be sailing inside. The tide's great on that Saturday, so we'll probably have our champ guys out in the bay. But it's a good chance to kind of like actually have a regatta of sorts without mixing from different yacht clubs and different areas, which is definitely not allowed yet. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, now we're going to take a minute to introduce our Opti coaches for the season, and I believe all of these guys are on the call. So Hannah, for those that are new, Hannah has been with our program for a really long time, and I'm going to let her talk, but I'm really excited this year. She is now in a full-time role with us. She's going to be doing all of our like Opti intro, learn to sail, intermediate level classes, and also helping out with a bunch of admin stuff, which I really, really need, which is awesome. So Hannah, are you here?
I'm here. Hi guys. I'm super excited for this season. Molly pretty much told you what classes I'm coaching. Most of mine are like very intro classes, so I get to shuttle them off to John and Timmy and Tommy and all them. So yeah, I'm adding keel boats and FJs this year, so I will be part of all that. I think that's it. I don't know if Timmy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Timmy. I started with the PY program about 6 years ago with high school sailing. And then I later joined the 420 race team later on during high school. I went to design tech. So I sailed on the 420 race team for about like 5 years. I'm still on it now. I graduated high school last year and I'm taking a gap year. So I competed like all over the country at different events and clinics for PY. And now I'm here coaching. So for Optis, I'm really excited to dig into like the technical parts of the Opti. Those are like my favorite parts about the 420s. There's a lot you can like tweak about the boat to make you go faster. And there's also a lot of technique to like fine tune in different conditions. So I'm super excited to dig into that.
Sorry guys, I am back. I had the joys of having a 3-year-old that's just learning how to go to the bathroom. It's perfect timing. Okay, so Timmy, thank you. Did we already have Tommy?
No, I'm about to go.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tommy. I started PY 10 years ago when I did Learn to Sail camp when I was 7. And I've gone up from Learn to Sail through Green Fleet, through Champ Fleet to the 420 race team and some high school sailing. And I've basically gone through PY for my entire childhood, and I've loved it. PY has always been like a second home to me. And now I'm really happy to be older and on the coaching side and sharing what I loved about PY on to the next generation. And yeah, I loved Optis. I think it's the most fun time in sailing because you're young and you're just having fun on the boat and learning all the fundamentals that are going to carry you on for life, for a lifelong sport that can have such a big impact. So I'm really looking forward to this season and coaching Opti Green and Opti Development and focusing on progressing the new kids and the kids I've already worked with the past year to the next level.
Hi, I'm John. And the 3-year-old has made it up here now. So hopefully this will go all right. My name is John Vandemore. I've been here coaching PYs for Optis for about 1.5 years now, mainly with Opti Champ. I did a little bit with Green Fleet and so on as well. So excited for this season. Excited to continue coaching the Opti program. Really excited for the Opti development team, which Tommy's going to be coaching, and I'm going to assist him a little bit on that. And I think that's going to be a great addition to the program and really help the kids go along. Excited to work with Timmy and Tommy. They're fantastic. I've got to coach them a little bit, very little bit with 420s, and they've done an awesome job sailing as sailors, and they've done a fantastic job coaching too. So it's been fantastic. Really excited for the Opti program and moving forward for this. So let's keep going. There we go. The kids have moved into my room now. Okay, so let's go talk a little bit about the Opti racing program at PYSF and how we have this set up. First off, we're talking about, and we're going to kind of, Hannah's doing the intro to race, so we're kind of, the next step after that is our green team. And in this area for the green team, we're really focusing on the skills that we need to develop. There goes the 3-year-old. The skills that we need to really develop to sail the boat well. This is a transition from intro to race and all the intro classes to actually being part of a team and having a practice rather than just going to a class. So a lot of those character building aspects that Molly was talking about earlier really start to kind of take shape as we go into the green team. Again, we're really focusing on developing skills and how to sail the boat well, and then introducing them to really racing and moving beyond that. The idea here is that definitely sail local regattas in the Green Fleet for this group. The top of the group will be sailing more of the, try to travel outside of PYSF and doing some more of the bays events from there. The next step is the development team. This is, we're trying to focus on skills to actually race the race course and performance boat handling. Also really focusing on sail setups. This is where we're going to really get into all those magnificent sail ties and where they should be tied on and how it affects our sail shape and so on. That's going to be a big part of the development, setting that up, as well as a lot of boat handling. Doing a lot of structures of racing itself, as you can see here, starting, working on sailing in clear air, mark roundings, finishing, and so on from that. The development team is expected to sail in all the Green Fleet regattas in the Bay Area. The very top of the development team will then start racing in red, white, and blue and be able to kind of move up into Champ Fleet as they finish off their development time there. The idea is for each of these levels, the very top group is seeing a little bit of what the next group is doing in order to kind of bring that back to their class and continue to help grow within the class. A big part of the racing here at PYSF is having sailors coach other sailors, being able to develop with each other, having developed real leaders within the classes that can share the knowledge that they get from going to regattas, from seeing different coaches and so on. So this is a way to kind of foster that relationship going forward. The Champ Fleet. It's a Champ Fleet that I'll primarily be coaching. We have 3 sessions this spring. This is where we're really trying to put it all together, focusing on racing, focusing on self-coaching. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Here, our big aspects is we're focusing on sail trim, talking about rake, how to set up the boat in more of an advanced way, really focusing on kind of advanced level boat handling, starting tactics, strategy. We talk a lot about weather, kind of regatta planning when hopefully we get to do those again. And this group for the Champ Fleet, we're really focusing on racing beyond the Bay Area. So we'll do the Bays events as well, but we really want the sailors to do the Harkin series, which is throughout California. Along with the Harkin series, it's not written here, but to do the PCCs, the Pacific Coast Championships, and the WCCs, which is the West Coast Championships, that kind of rotate through California. And also, I think they rotate up into the Northwest as well to sail those events. And then the next step is to get them to do some more national events, whether they're up to New England's or going to Florida to swim events and so on, is trying to take that next level. In all these levels of racing, there's 2 big aspects to this. Obviously, racing outside of our PYSF and then racing outside of the Bay Area will introduce the kids to a larger group of sailors and be able to build those relationships across the country and hopefully eventually across the world, which is fantastic. But also to really expose them to different sailing at different levels and have a check-in to where they are. We want the sailors to be able to feel comfortable in their own pond at PYSF, but then to grow beyond that pond and keep pushing themselves and keep pushing their limits as they go. So we're excited for all that in this setup. I talked a little bit about self-coaching, and one of the things that we really want to push through, especially in a time of COVID where our classes are so restricted and they're so small, but it's the way I believe and I grew up sailing, is having sailors go out and sail on their own. I'm pretty sure you don't get better at sailing by not sailing. So being able to go out and go sailing as much as possible is huge. You do not need a coach every day with you to go sailing and get practice. You should be going sailing as much as you possibly can. I've talked a lot about with the Champ Fleeters of getting their boats, going out in the water, call up a couple friends, go out sailing together. They have a lot of skills that they can work on their own. And if we're doing our jobs, then we should be setting them up to be able to practice on their own. And I know Timmy, Tommy, and myself and Hannah will be doing that as much as we can. So really want to encourage the kids to go out and take responsibility of their own improvement, going out sailing on their own. For safety wise, and that's usually the first question we get, is how is safety set up? How can my kids go out sailing on their own, be able to do that? Well, we have the chat set up to kind of check in and check out on the water. We have the chat set up there, so it's a resource for parents. So if you have a question like, hey, my son or daughter wants to go sailing today, is it a good idea looking at the conditions, right? And we're happy to say, hey, yes or no. Or my son or daughter wants to go out sailing today, but I'm not sure whether they're ready to do this on their own. This is where the coaches can help out a lot and give a lot of information to do that. The biggest thing for what we're talking about here is you have to have boat ownership, obviously, for this. We do have some rec sailing days where they can go sailing, but the big thing here is boat ownership is going to have to happen. So this is really going to primarily be for the development through Champ Fleet is what we're talking about. And this is what the Green Fleeters are working towards to be able to do this. I'll share a quick story for myself. I grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. They got 8 inches of snow yesterday, so much better being out here. But when I grew up sailing, I would go, we didn't have cell phones then. So my parents would leave me with 2 quarters and drop me off to go sailing. I'd go put in 1 quarter and call my parents up and say, hey, I'm heading out right now. I go sailing for a few hours, come back in, use the other quarter to call my parents and be like, I'm in, please pick me up, and went out and sailing and worked on that. Our sailors should be developing the skills to be able to be safe and productive on the water, and that's what we're trying to teach them every day. The coaches are here for a resource for that and to support that as much as possible as we go. All right, moving on here. I've gotten a lot of questions about, I just talked about, all right, you need to own a boat and go sailing on your own. And then I get a lot of questions of, I know nothing about sailing. My kid's really into it. but how do I buy an Optimus? What does it work out? What does it look like? How much should it cost? What are the things I should get, and so on. So I put this up here as a guide, as a start for this. The Opti world is huge. It's the biggest one design class. It's the biggest sailing class there is in the world. It's very big in the United States and throughout North America, and the used market is really big. So I'll kind of explain between new and used and charter and everything else, and kind of what the best deals are from this. But if you're looking at a boat, and most likely you look at a used boat, you want to look at a few things. The shape of the hull, right? Is the hull being taken care of? And a good sign that the boat is taken care of is that it comes with a full set of covers. If a boat's coming to you or being sold with no covers at all, I would be skeptical right off the bat before even looking at it. If it's coming with a full set of covers, okay, they checked one box, so I keep going forward and make sure there's no obvious holes, dents, scratches, everything else in the hull. A lot of stuff can be repaired pretty easily. A lot of scratches can be buffed out, but you want to start off with the best shape you possibly can. The next thing is what spars, mainly the metal spars that are coming with the boat, which is our mast and boom and sprit. What are they? What are they coming with? A quick, easy guide is what color are they? A lot of stuff in the Opti world is done by color. If they're black or gold spars, then they're going to be pretty good, right? They're going to be in the standard that we want. If they come with silver, especially shiny silver spars, they're not the spars we want the kids sailing with. There's a difference in how the bendiness of the mass that has a big play in who sails what boat. It also means how the boats are rigged. So the club spars that the Green Fleet will be using, everything else is a great intro spar, but it's not what we want for racing. So it should be the black or gold colored spars. Sails itself, when you buy a used boat, honestly, you're most likely going to have to buy a new sail anyways. So whatever sails it comes with, it doesn't really matter to begin with. That wouldn't be a stopping point for me, because when you buy a used boat, you have to really think you're going to invest in new sails anyways from that. Blades, there's a few brands out there that are really good. The simple thing is, if they have the wood epoxy blades, you're going to be good. You're going to be fine. That's a great starting point. If they come with the fiberglass white blades, it's not as great, but that's the bottom of the list. The most important to me with buying the boat was the shape of the hull would be number one, and what spars you're getting to number two. Those are the two biggest investments when it comes to the boat itself. The blades are a fairly big investment, but it's not a bad thing to have, beater blades that can be dragged across the parking lot. Obviously, we don't want that, but it's a good place to start. When we get nicer blades, we obviously want to teach the kids to treat them properly. I put a couple brands up here. There's DSK, there's N1, there's what's called New Rule blades. I'll talk about a few websites to look at all this stuff as well. The Champ Fleet just got a huge list from me 2 weeks ago on all this stuff too, but that's a good place to start. Okay, should I buy a new boat, which is a little over 5,000, or used, which can range from, free to about $3,000? What's good for this? First, I would say is if you want to buy a newish boat, which is fantastic, I would buy a chartered boat. It is the best deal. Yes, it'll be used, but the charter companies do a really good job of keeping the boats in good shape. They take pride in their product for that. So Winter and McLaughlin boats are the two biggest charter companies. There are a couple others, but those are kind of the two main ones, and the main ones that turn over their fleets fairly regularly. And so Winter and McLaughlin is good for that. I put in the websites here on this page for the winter packages from that, and then I also did it for McLaughlin as well. McLaughlin has lots of different package stages for that. With the spars that we were talking about and the blades and everything else, if you buy a McLaughlin package, you should start at Advanced Racer. Anything below that is going to have parts that are going to be pretty much useless for you. So starting at Advanced Racer, which that's what they label it as, is the way to start from there. Obviously, used boats are great as well. Or if you want to buy brand new, these websites too will take you to brand new boats as well. Those are great as well. The nice thing about the PY Opti fleet is that it's been turned over a fair amount, and the boats are in great shape. A lot of the boats that have been sold from that are in great shape, and I know there's going to be a few more PY boats that are on the market that are going to be sold as well. So I think that's a great starting point to look at what the PY market's going to do. Storing the boats, PYSF has now, we actually just put it together thanks to some great parents and to some of the awesome staff at PYSF. These guys did a great job of, I didn't do it, but the other staff did, of putting together a nice new rack for Opti storage, and so we've expanded that. So more boats, there's more spaces available for Optis to be stored down there. And there's also more space to be able to rig the boats, which is great in general, but certainly really important in the time of COVID. So it's a really nice setup that we have now starting this winter. The last thing is sales and what sales you should get. So a couple things to know about sales when you're looking at these. One is they're very weight dependent. And a lot of times they come from Europe, so they're going to give you kilograms instead of pounds, just a heads up. But you have to really look at what the weight of the sailor is to match for the sail. That's pretty important to be in that weight range. We're happy to have a discussion with you if your sailor is kind of on the cusp of one weight range to another. We can kind of make a decision there of how that's going to go. It's probably generally better to go a little bit bigger because they're going to grow into it a little bit. But we can talk about that. But generally, they're put in weight ranges for it. Racing sails are significantly better in terms of setting up the boats as opposed to getting these practice sails that are out there. There's Opti Parts has a practice sail, Intensity has a practice sail, stuff like that. These sails are not class legal and can't be raced in regattas. But a lot of the kids were like, oh, this is a great deal. We can have this practice sail and I can beat this up in practice and I have my nice race sail. The shape that those sails are in, these practice sails, are really terrible. We have a couple of kids right now in Champ Fleet that are sailing with these Opti Part sails that are just a horrible shape and really hard to teach about sail shape and sail controls with them because we have to do things really differently to make them work. So I would try to push against getting any Opti Part sails and practice sails. I think it's far better to buy there's actually used race sails that you can find online, or buy a race sail, and when they really get into racing and we start racing regattas again, then buy another new one at some point. But they're much better for learning. That's the big aspect, is having the race sails that you can actually affect the shape and the kids can see it, feel the impact through their tiller and their main sheet and be able to see it with their own eyes. It's really important at this stage to be able to do that. So I'd encourage you to do for race sails. There's a ton of different brands out there. Coaches usually go with the brands they feel the most comfortable with in terms of tuning and so on for it. It doesn't really matter to me. I have the most experience with Olympic and North sails. There's J sails. There's a bunch of other sails out there too. They're totally fine. Our current team right now has a couple different types of sails too. So there's a couple different versions out there. If I had to choose, I would actually choose the new North sails that are coming out, that are being produced in the US. I think they're really good. We have a question with Leon, if you want to ask a question real quick. Leon. Okay, guess a fake hand up. You can also type in the chat. I know that Molly's doing her best with our two kids hanging off of them doing
Leon
that.
actually Leon had a question about hole shape.
Okay. Do we know the question about hull shape?
Yes, he said, what shape should the hole be? A light parabola? He's talking about like the bottom. When you talked about buying an Opti to look at the hole shape, what are you looking for?
Looking for scratches. All the hulls are one designs. They're all going to be the same shape if they're an Optimist, but just looking for scratches, nicks and dings, especially on the corners, are important. The most important part of the Opti that we want to preserve is the very bottom of the boat. In the bottom corners, the four corners in the bottom, we want to see that those are in really good shape. If there's some scratches up higher, that's fine. We can buff those out. That's no big deal. But really, the very bottom being protected is what we're looking for. So hopefully that answers your question, Leon. Okay. Again, the sails are weight dependent. So definitely look at that. If you have questions, you kind of put a package together, or you're working with Winter or McLaughlin or any of the others, and you want to, and there are more boat dealers, sorry, there are more boats than Winter or McLaughlin. I don't mean to seem like it's just those two, and they're great. These are just kind of the two biggest in the game, especially in this country. But if you have other questions for that and you have a package, please, I actually encourage you to send it out in the chat. And so I can respond to it to everybody. So everybody can kind of learn from that as well. Happy to do that in any of the development chat or the Champ Fleet chat. You can also send me.
Thing that sorry to interrupt, John, but I know that hopefully all of our sailors here are progressing through the whole program, and they're eventually going to move into doing a high school team and team racing and racing 420s. At some point, kids might be buying 420s as well. We provide all the other boats in our program except for Champ Fleet for Optis and the travel team and sometimes the club team for 420s. And Zim is also another option, and they like to kind of do a long-term partnership with families. And I hear about that all the time with, hey, I chartered an event for an Opti with Zim, and then you kind of get like credit as you go along. But I would imagine that's probably the case with other dealers as well, but just as another thing to think about.
Yeah, so Zim is a great, that's fantastic. Zim is a great option for that. The other one is the winter option that I put on there, which is Simmons Boat Works. They also just got approved to build 420s. So they would be doing something like that too. So there's another example of what Zim's doing for that. So, and these guys that are doing, McLaughlin and Winter and Zim are fantastic of kind of helping you out, putting together packages, and they want to have a long-term relationship with you. So that's good stuff too. When we go to Champ Fleet and we do some more events across the country, you'll get to know the Zim guys or McLaughlin or Winter guys, the Simmons Boat Works guys that do Winter pretty well. And they like to build a relationship with you and sell you boats for sure. So I think that goes over all of our boat stuff here for doing that. Again, happy to answer questions and stuff for that too. Molly, did you want to take over again for the how to stay connected? I don't know if you're still on.
Yes, I am still here. Okay, so our last slide that we're just looking at, it's kind of a summary of, in the COVID times, we can't ever see each other, right? We're all sitting in our kitchens and our living rooms and, in other countries and all over the place. But at some point we will be able to get together. And these are kind of options that hopefully are sooner than later. The regatta that we're having in April, we call it a regatta, but it really isn't like a normal regatta. So it's going to be the same setup where you're dropping your kids off like you are for practice, just because we can't quite, can't handle having 50 people on site in one place. But eventually we will. And eventually we'll be running regattas and we'll be needing people to help check kids in and to run the mark boats and take scores when people are finishing. Our work parties, many of you were at the work party just a couple weeks ago, or months ago, I guess now, where we moved 50 ton of rock. That was amazing. But things like that, and building racks and stuff like that. The community aspect is, I think, what all of us are missing with everything in our lives. And that is a really, really big part of PY. that we haven't been able to do since, March of last year. So I'm really hopeful that that's going to be happening soon. Maybe in the summer, maybe I'm hopeful thinking, but, maybe we'll be doing some events this summer. When we tow to regattas, in the normal world, we would have been taking about 13 different trailers to just the local regatta that's, up in Sausalito or over in Richmond. And so getting those 13 trailers back and forth requires hopefully 26 different parents that are helping move them around. And so that also is going to be building a sense of community, because it's definitely a mission. Everybody meets early in the morning in the big parking lot, hooks up all the trailers together, follows each other. You don't help the kids unload the trailers, but you take the empty trailers away when the kids are all done and off with their coaches. I'd sent in the chat the Signal link to join the parents chat. So we had WhatsApp. We used to always use WhatsApp as our messaging app, because we like to be able to do a lot of video and photos and such in our chats. There was a request from many of our parents to no longer use WhatsApp this season. And so we're using Signal, and we started using Signal just a couple weeks ago. So the new chat is in here. I'll also email it out. Anybody and everybody can join that. It's basically just a stopping point, and it's a place to ask questions. It's a place for hopefully for you guys to say, hey, look, we want to come down and go sailing on Thursday. Anybody else around? I'd love to have a buddy come with me. The mailing list, I assume most of you are already on it, but if not, if you go to our homepage, it's right at the top, right underneath our COVID links. You can join any of our mailing lists. And then also, email me or just check out our website. We are in the process of kind of upgrading everything that we have done at PY. So we got the tent going over at West Point. We're hopefully getting some AstroTurf and pavers and such going there. We're going to also be revamping our website as well. So hopefully you'll be seeing that in the next couple months. It's a pretty big project that we're undertaking. So, but info is there now if you have it. And you're welcome for switching to Signal. It's a new thing. And, it was actually what most people asked when they said, hey, we want to switch. Almost everybody suggested Signal. And so I thought that was a pretty good sign. So, we're always open for change. So if somebody, if you have any issues, feel free to reach out and tell me. Any other questions for us or for Tommy or Timmy or Hannah or John?
Actually, Molly, I kind of got this out of order, but because I just followed the slides, but Timmy and Tommy haven't had a chance to kind of speak about their groups yet. I just went over the overview. So how about we go with Timmy? I think you're doing Green Fleet. I brought that slide up again.
Sure. I think you really actually covered it pretty well. The Green Fleet is really kind of from intro to race, you learned a little bit briefly how to race. And now going into Green Fleet, we're really going to start emphasizing racing more as well as technique. And so we're really going to be starting to give even more skills. The whole PY transition is we're just adding on new skills and getting even more time in the boat. So that's what we're doing. Opti Green is more of learning better technique and more about the Opti and how you can change different settings. So for that, there's also going to be a few more expectations with Opti Green. So it's really important that every sailor has a watch coming to practice. We might not always do starts, but it's definitely important to always have one and to always be ready to do starts anytime. It's one of those pieces of gear that you just need to have all the time, from Opti Green all the way into racing. Wherever you go in sailing, you should always have a watch. So that's definitely one of the pieces. That's it. Talk if you want to add on.
A watch with a count of the timer.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go over the development team. So basically, so PY, it's a progression from intro, then to Green is their first race team, and then development, I think we're focusing on taking the fundamentals of racing from Green and expanding them to the expectations of Champ Fleet. So if the previous system of moving kids from Green Fleet straight to Champ Fleet, those people who are now held to the expectations of people who have already been in Champ Fleet for sometimes years. And the development teams to help ease that transition and bring the skill level to the expectations of the kids who are already in the championship fleet. So we'll be focusing a lot more on boat setup, proper sail rigging, as John said, like mast steps, understanding what control lines do and when and why to use them, boat handling, roll tacks, roll jibes, sitting in the boat properly at all times, keeping your sails trimmed properly at all times, and then understanding like the fundamentals of racing strategy. So key concepts and vocabulary, because sailing is like a whole nother language. And if you move people up too quickly, it's very easy to fall behind just simply because you don't understand some basic vocabulary or concepts. And it can feel like embarrassing to ask a question if you're in a class that feels too advanced for you. So development's all about learning the basics before going to that higher level and expanding on that. And then obviously classroom or racing conduct of sailors. So how you behave is going to be key, because there's a difference between Green Fleet and Championship Fleet. The kids are older and they're athletes. They take their sailing very seriously, and behavior needs to match that. So being well behaved, asking attentive questions, and showing interest in bettering yourself and learning. And also showing leadership, as John said, a key is having kids teach other kids. So showing leadership and helping your fellow teammates on and off the water is key. And obviously, as Timmy said, bringing gear, watches, right stuff for the day. If it's going to be windy, having warm clothes, change of clothes at the end of the day, towel, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a little bit of what development's going to be like.
That's great. Awesome job by both Timmy and Tommy. They're fantastic, and that's fantastic what they just put together. I would say one thing too that I really push a lot for the championship guys is to keeping an active notebook, and not a notebook that has math in it or social studies or something like that as well. One that's dedicated for sailing, and they can take a log of what their sailing is every day. The championship fleet guys work in their notebooks every day. We talk about what the conditions were, how we set up our boats, so we can come back to it in a similar day with conditions later on and say, oh, on this day I set my boat up this way and it was going really well. Okay, so I want to do that again. So they can repeat their settings. The key to having great consistency in racing and great consistency in boat handling is being able to do those same things again and again. And a notebook is a big part of that. So that's something that the kids should expect to be required to have. And the earlier, the better, to have an active notebook that's just for sailing. It's also a very cool thing to look back on after years and years of sailing, to see what you wrote in your notebook when you were 10 or 12 or something like that, or what you doodled in there, or what pictures you drew. I certainly had notebooks through my whole life and gone through like 50 of them. And it's pretty cool to look back on. So definitely having a notebook for that. So again, nice job by those guys. I think that's it for us.
Sorry, you just muted yourself, John. Can you flip back to the pathway page? It's like towards the beginning. The class sizes, we're limited by COVID with, no more than 12. But just to give you a reference, this is an awesome thing that we have added the development team. So Tommy, you did a great job of kind of summarizing why we have it. It is a very big jump in maturity and in ability to go from green to champ. And when we had, an Opti team of 6 to 10 kids, kind of all the way from learn to sail through champ, we could deal with it and we could make the kids, help the kids get through the program. But we currently, hold on just a second. We currently have 8 to 12 in each of these classes, if not more. And so being able to really get the kids in the correct level at the correct time with where they're at is really important. And I think it's really great that we're able to do that. It's sort of like COVID forced our hands, and it's a silver lining in a way that it forced us to have these smaller classes and to give the appropriate steps along the way. And I'm getting some questions about the rest of the pathways that are on here. We are going to go over this in depth next Monday, but to answer your question, the keel boats that we have are ideal 18s. And so they're 18-foot keel boats with symmetrical kites. But we'll talk about that next Monday. Are there any other? Yeah, yes, Hannah's saying we want a countdown timer on your watch. Countdown repeat is even better. And you will be, you don't have to spend $100 and get a big sailing watch that's really fancy. You can get, you know, the Ironman Timex deal at REI or whatever. That's all I use. That's all I've ever used. So you don't need to go too fancy. Any other questions? Make sure you join the chat. That's the best way to get your answers right away and to get everyone's attention. Thank you, coaches, for making the call and putting this all together. This was awesome. And thank you, parents and sailors. And I look forward to seeing you guys down at PY soon.
There was one thing in the chat about the next Monday's this basically, and from what you said, we're recording all of these, so if you're not able to see it at the time we're having the video chat, you can watch it again recorded.
Yes, I'll put a link to the recording, so if you can't make it, and I'll send this out to the chat as well for anybody that wasn't able to see it. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. We'll see you down at PY soon.